Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Marauders Guild and another behind the scenes special here on the channel. This time, we're going behind the scenes of Star Wars Altered History. Luke and Leia were never separated. This was an 8-part series, not including the prologue episode that I wrote. So, really, a 9-part series in all considering. And this was definitely one of the more fun series I got to write. It was taking a lot of steps that I haven't done. I had to experiment with some new things that I hadn't used before to add to the visual aspect of it as well. There was a lot going on here in this series, and I'm really proud of how it turned out, and more importantly, I'm proud of how you guys received it. And as per usual with these behind the scenes, I'm going to be going over tossed out ideas, my thought process, and what I made certain things happen, things that variety. And along the way, I hope to answer any questions you guys might have about this series, and more importantly, what the next series will be. So to start things off, let's go with that prologue. And let's go with where this idea sprouted. Now, this idea sprouted from, again, all of you. I had a poll posted recently, and this was the second highest idea voted on that poll. So I was like, let's do this. I was a bit worried going into it because this was something that I didn't necessarily, I won't say I tried to avoid it, but I didn't know where I could take it if I did, because I've already seen things of like, what if they weren't separated, or what if they were swapped and like Leia went to Tatooine and Luke went to Alderaan. And I was like, okay, there's so many things about, the destiny of the Skywalker children. What can I do that separates it, So I decided to do a prologue to set the scene. I said, okay, if they were never separated, where would they logically go? And some people would probably have them go to Tatooine. Some people would probably have like Obi-Wan take of them, raise them. I wanted to go with a logical choice. If everything still happened the way it did in some degree, the logical thing that they would say is, hey, Obi-Wan would tell Bail to take both of them. Because here's the thought process with this. If you remember, if you've seen anything about, the inner workings of Kenobi's mind during this whole situation, he fully believed Anakin failed. He lost all faith in Anakin at this point, and he put a lot of faith in Luke. But he also knew that Yoda had a lot of faith in Leia. That was something that we've seen. If you've read the Star Wars from a certain point of view, you've also seen that aspect of their beliefs. Even though that is further down the line, they're certainly going to have that at this moment as well. So blending those ideas, what I just said to myself, what if Obi-Wan proposed that, hey, we're going to train them both? Because it was always a bit strange to me how they decided to separate them and then train one. And I get that they didn't want Vader to discover them, but there was something about that. Like, okay, I don't really see why keeping them together would raise any suspicions. I don't see two siblings being together elevating their presence in the Force in the terms of like they're easily able to be told, hey, this is my daughter, this is my son. Because if that was the case, then individually Vader should have been able to tell those were his children from some kind of sensing through the Force. But he had no idea Leia was his daughter, and probably died not knowing Leia was his daughter, for that matter. So I was like, I can bypass that in that degree. So moving on from there, and we get this prologue of Obi-Wan telling Bail, hey, take both children. I'll come back in 19 years. Now, here's the big change that I made. Now, it is a big change in saying, hey, take both children. The really big change was, where did Obi-Wan go? Because Obi-Wan knew that he had to take on this journey of training the children in 19 years' time. And he had to do it without a Jedi temple. He had to do it with the basic Jedi, without basic Jedi scripture and all that. So he had to go out and study what he could out in the galaxy, one that is being controlled by the Empire. And I really based that off of Luke Skywalker's journey. If you've read the Adventures of Luke Skywalker novel, if you've seen him in Battlefront 2's campaign, anything that has Luke post episode 6, he's going on the journey to gather as much knowledge as he can before he starts training Jedi pupils. And I thought, Kenobi could do something like that. He very well could do something like that. So he goes out and gathers all the knowledge he can before he comes back to greet the children and before he comes back to teach them. So we're gonna stop there. We're gonna stop there and talk about the prologue because the prologue ends with Kenobi returning back 19 years later to greet the children. And I do want to make a note about the personality aspect because I tried to do this throughout a lot. I really wanted to have them be brother and sister, but have such a stark difference in personality. Why? Because that's what you get a lot of times when you have siblings that are raised together. They're kind of, this is a weird way to explain it. There's a kind of break in how they act towards one another. It doesn't mean they're vastly different. It doesn't mean they hate each other. It's just one person might like something and the sibling might like another just because that sibling likes it. They don't want to be the same, if you get what I'm saying. I think people who have siblings can attest to that. When you have a brother or sister, you don't want to be the exact same as them to a certain degree. So if you watch this series, I really try to have Luke be more bashful, be more head driven, very similar to how Anakin was in his younger years. And I really want Leia to be more thoughtful, more poised in how she thought, very similar to how Padme was in her early years, because Padme had to because she was a queen. But I feel like having her as a mother and having Anakin as a father, those traits would certainly be passed down to their children respectively. Which one got which trait is up in the air, but in this case, Leia got her mother's and Luke got his father's. So moving on, we're gonna get into episode 1. This was called The Destiny Start. I might have called it something else. I'm looking at the script that I write for all of this, and sometimes the titles I'll put in the script aren't the final title for the whole episode in general. So forgive me if that's not the name of the episode, but you know it is episode 1. So in this episode, I do believe, so we have a further conversation with Obi-Wan of him talking about their father, Anakin Skywalker. And there was a key thing I wanted to do there is I didn't want Obi-Wan to tell them that Anakin became Vader. I didn't want that to be a focal point because there was already going to be so much going on here. The fact that I had them being trained at the same time, had them going out in the galaxy instead of just staying in one place and possibly encountering people. I didn't want there to be so much going on, that you had to expect. I didn't want them to be, okay, let's go here because we have to do this training thing. But at the same time, oh crap, Vader's my father. I didn't want that to be flooding it. And I've done that before with a few series where I have the child find out that Vader was their father. I did it with the Luke Skywalker series. I did it with the Leia series. I decided this time around, they don't need to know that. We obviously know that. Obi-Wan knows it as well. So I wanted to keep it for the most part, the only person who knew were the people who were there. So that'd be Obi-Wan. Of course, Bail knew as well. This is why this whole situation happens. But I didn't want the children to know that. They could know about their father, Anakin, because they had to understand why this journey was being undertaken. They could know that much, but they did not need to know the fate of their father. And I toyed with Obi-Wan revealing it. And I'm actually going to talk about how I almost had him reveal it towards the end because it would have happened in the final episode. But we're going to get to that when we get to it. So we're going to keep on track here. Keep looking at episode 1. So yeah, that pretty much is the gist of what I have to actually say about episode 1. Little Easter eggs here and there. I think there was something I had about Luke saying, could he fly a TIE fighter or something like that? And that was a little small Easter egg to Luke wanting to be a pilot desperately. And Alderaan being a core world, they would have had ready access to TIE fighters should they want them. Even though you can say the Empire hated Alderaan. That is the fact. But he would have had access to TIE fighters if they want. Because it was a core world planet at this point. So that's where that is. So I'm going to move on to episode 2, which is called A Grim Discovery. Again, if that's not the name of the episode, my bad. But the Grim Discovery episode, the training, I think I had to jump up about 6 months. I don't know. I want to say. And in this training, they encounter Jeddah. That's where they're going to head next. It is a location of one of the first Jedi temples, if not the first Jedi temple ever just. I think no, I think the one on Ahch-To is the first, but Jeddah is definitely one of the first Jedi temples in the galaxy. Obviously, Jeddah is from Rogue One, and I really love pulling from Rogue One because I feel like Rogue One offered a pool of information that you can uh, take from and use in any kind of story. It's very important. You can use it if you want to tell a rebel story, if you want to tell a Jedi story. Rogue One had a lot of great assets, and that's why you see me dig into those a lot. Even Star Wars Rebels as well. This is the first time I didn't actually reference something from Rebels though, so that was something that kind of shocked me in the end. But I was very proud to pull that off. So in this episode, they go to Jeddah, and basically everything that happened in the galaxy, as you saw, and sorry, because that was my mindset. Everything that you basically saw happen from episode 3 to episode 4, including the space in between Rogue One and even solo Star Wars stories, as we find out later in the series, all that did happen. However, the one thing that was not there was Leia. So everything that she did didn't occur. So this is why Jeddah happened, but Jeddah had a slightly different outcome in this timeline. So it was still wiped out by the Death Star. Well, not Jeddah. Scarif had a slight different outcome. Let me say that. But Jeddah was still wiped out, and Luke and Leia and Kenobi go there because they're gonna looking for knowledge that they can use to assist them. They obviously get there, and the planet has been wiped. The Empire used the Death Star on Jeddah, and this is my way of introducing Kenobi to a greater storyline. Because this is actually, let's talk about it here. This is where my first scrapped idea comes into play. I originally was not going to have Obi-Wan. There's a siren going nearby. That was, I don't know if you could hear it, but I was not going to have Obi-Wan be such a critical role in this series. He was obviously going to be critical. Let me not say that. I was not going to have him last as long as he did. But the one thing that stopped me is I tend to kill Kenobi a lot. Every time I use him, I'll throw him in a one-off episode and he'll die in the same episode. And given that I didn't use him in one episode here, this was the second, third episode, and I was gearing up to kill him early and then shift the focus to being Luke and Leia. But my idea was Kenobi would be a more critical person in the early stages of something like this. If he is tasked with training these two children, there's a lot of weight that's going to be on his shoulders. These are the two children of his old best friend, a man he considered his brother, who is now turned to the dark side and is now his mortal enemy in a sense. So I thought he deserves a bigger stage in this story because, in truth, he's the center of all of this. So what I originally was going to do was have Obi-Wan fight Vader earlier. He was going to almost go straight there, and he was going to die. Vader was going to kill him. And then the switch would be Vader focusing on Luke and Leia, and there was a whole nother storyline I was going to do there, but that was also scrapped, and I'll cover that later, because that storyline was going to happen around episode 6, maybe 7, I think. So we'll talk about it when we get there. We're still in episode 2. We're actually just about to hop on and talk about episode 3, and this is the journey to Yavin. Now, it is in this episode. Now, at the end of episode 2, I believe I had Alderaan. You found out that Alderaan was destroyed. And in this message, in this episode, rather than episode 3, they need to go to Yavin. And the reason Leia knew about Yavin, in the story, as you see, she says she has seen her father's computer records and he kept going there. That kind of information I pulled from the novel Leia, Princess of Alderaan, if you have read it, by Claudia Gray. She is a tremendous Star Wars writer. And side note, she's writing some stories for the High Republic stuff. I cannot wait to see what she adds to the story and what everyone adds. But that is a side note. Let's get back on track here. But yeah, pulled from that novel, a lot of that was Leia seeing her father bail in the Rebel Alliance before she knew what the Rebel Alliance really entailed, and that her father had such a big role in it. And how nosy she was, something she got from her parents, you can obviously tell. about her father's ongoings and everything he was doing. So I feel like in this story it would be no different. She would still have that snoopiness to her, even though she is a bit more poised than her brother. She is the daughter of Anakin and Padme, two people who stuck their noses in a lot of things, even though they shouldn't have. So that was a trait that Leia had, and that's why she knew where Yavin was, and what she knew what Yavin was, not where it was, and they were able to go there. But all the while, I had this thought in my mind of, okay, how do I get Obi-Wan to Vader? Because in my mind, I didn't want to use the Death Star. And the reason being is, as I mentioned, everything that happened in Rogue One still happened, save for Leia being there. So, if that's the case, I thought, okay, how would that play out differently? If they're able to, if Leia was there, Leia was partly the reason they found Yavin in the first place. Well, if Leia was never there, if her counselorship was never there, there was a lot of things that weren't expected to be found out. One of those would be the secret location of the Rebel base. He wouldn't be able to get that out of Leia. So, or search their computer ship records or whatever to see where it had been. None of that would have been accessible because Leia's counselorship would not be there. She wouldn't have gone with Admiral Raddus. So Raddus would have gone alone. And they would have done the whole Scarif situation. Death Star would have been found out. But the key thing is they didn't know where to find the rebels. After the rebels got that and escaped, this whole thing of the Empire trying to figure out where the rebels were, and the rebels weren't going to do a quick ditch effort to take out the Death Star so quickly, because in hindsight, the only reason they did that was because they knew the Death Star was coming. If they know the Death Star's not coming, they're not going to be so quick to attack it. They're going to plan and make sure they have the absolute best strategy possible, because they don't know that. Because in hindsight, if Luke, keep in mind also to have Luke there, if Luke did not use the Force, they weren't going to destroy the Death Star. They were going to die that day. So put that in perspective. That's why the Death Star, in general, isn't in this story as much, other than destroying Alderaan and wiping out Yavin and a whole Scarif situation as well. So let's get back and talk about Episode 3 and everything that's going on here. I believe in Episode 3 we have Vader contacting Palpatine. Now, I saw somebody comment on one of the episodes that they don't believe Vader would tell Palpatine if he found out that was his, if he found out about his children, whatever. Actually, no, wipe that. That was a whole nother series. I'm wrong. But what was I gonna say here? This is a podcast. This is I don't edit this. This is all gonna stay in because I want this to be as like feel free as possible. So this could end up being long. I'm trying to really get back on my train of thought, but yeah, Vader does contact Palpatine in this series, and he tells him that Kenobi has taken 2 apprentices. And the interesting thing here is, I had Palpatine say, "Don't kill them, capture them," and the reason being is Palpatine, though he had a lot of confidence in Vader, he always has Plan Bs, Plan Cs, Plan Ds, Plan Es, whatever. If these 2 children turned out to be so special that Obi-Wan was training them personally in the state that the galaxy was in, Palpatine knew there's something with these children, and I want to know what. Could they be replacement for Vader? I don't know, but he knew something was up if Obi-Wan had a hand in the training of these 2 personally. So that's why Vader's on a mission to capture the children, but he's also on a mission to kill Kenobi as usual, because there is still a vast, vast hatred there between the 2 of them. So we're gonna jump up and actually let's talk about the lightsaber storyline, because the lightsaber storyline for Leia, I believe, was brought up in this episode, and there was a lot of curiosity with me in that, because I want to say I wanted there to be a reason Leia. See, how do I want to put this? I wanted Leia to be very central, almost like the secondary character in this, secondary to Obi-Wan. If I had to order the importance of all the stories, it would be Obi-Wan story, Leia story, Luke story, if you get what I'm saying there. And the reason being, there's something about writing Leia's journey through the Force which was a level of importance to me. And I feel like part of that is because we've seen what Luke's journey was like, so I didn't want to put him center stage. But we didn't get to see what Leia's journey with the Force is like. So I wanted to put her as more of a centerpiece than her brother, which is why this lightsaber story came up. Because if they're gonna train, they can't train with one. Luke has Anakin's saber or his father, their family saber, so that's his. He doesn't have to worry about constructing one. That was my idea there. But Leia's gonna need one, so she was gonna have to be sent out on this journey to go to Ilum. And this part of the story takes influences from Fallen Order and what happened there and how the Empire's still on Ilum. And here's the big reason I wanted Ilum there. I was actually going to have, and this is what I talked about earlier when the cut storyline with Luke and Leia. This is where this was going to start. So what I was actually going to have happen was when they went to Ilum, the pair of them, Luke and Leia. As you saw, Luke did end up being captured. Leia was not. What I originally was going to do was have Luke fall to the dark side, and it was going to be a fight between Luke and Leia while Obi-Wan and Vader were fighting. I sat back and I really thought long and hard about that idea. I was like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? The reason it was scrapped is because I just didn't want to have a dark side ending again. I do a lot of the bad guys winning. If you go back and watch, I can admit that. I've had a few stories where the good guys won, but a lot of my stories, the bad guys win. And sometimes I try to level it out by having a happy ending paired with a sad ending or something like that. But I just wanted there to be a story with some shimmer of hope. You know, I didn't want there to be dark side everywhere. So I decided, no, I'll have Luke get captured, but he'll resist anything. He'll stay true to his roots of the light side of the Force, and I'll get him and Leia separated through some kind of rescue. And part of that was built upon the construction of Vader's executor, and I put that was almost my replacement for the Death Star. And the reason I replaced it was a lot of influences from Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. If you played that game, you know that Vader's executor under construction was sort of a focal point almost. There was a good amount of scenes on board it. It was actually a scene where Vader, quote unquote, killed Starkiller in front of Palpatine. So I thought, well, if this is still under construction here, and I believe that game's events takes place a year before New Hope, and more likely still a construction around this time period. So Vader is on it and using it, even though it is not completely finished. So on from there, I just thought, okay, I'm gonna have something happen here because an executed Star Destroyer is definitely something that the Rebellion is gonna want to get rid of if they can. So I'll still make some use of this in the end. I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but really I kind of have to because a lot of the stuff that happens in between, there's nothing really special about it. Nothing. Well, it's special, but there's no like precursor background information, I guess you can say, about why I did it. Also, I did put Cara Dune in there from Mandalorian, and I did that simply because of the Alderaanian reference she was given in, I can't remember what chapter it was, but in the newest season, we found out she was an Alderaanian survivor. So I thought, oh man, I have to put her in the story now. So I did that, and yeah. So let's talk about making the finale, because that's really where the meat of this story comes to a head. And the finale, making it was one a lot of fun because I thought I wanted to step up the visual side of it. I had always put a lot more put a lot of focus on the visual, not only the auditory side of the story, but the visual side of the story as well. Because you might be listening and not watching, but if you are, I want you to feel like you're watching a movie almost. I mean, it's not exactly a movie because it's pictures with the occasional video here and there. But I wanted it to feel like you're experiencing something more than just an audio book, you know. I wanted there to be sound effects. I wanted there to be visual representations. So I toyed around with games, actually. Jedi Fallen Order. Got some mods, as you can see in the final battle. I had a mod of Obi-Wan fighting Vader. That was a lot of fun to work with and get done. I want to talk about is just the thought process of building a fight between Obi-Wan and Vader. And how I tried to design it. Stylistically, I wanted to design it like a movie. If you've seen any kind of final battles in any kind of movie, not just Star Wars, there's always two stories coming to a head here. And that's what I had. I had two stories that are coming to a head of Leia's journey with her lightsaber construction and things like that variety. But also had the story of Obi-Wan and Vader coming to a head. On the Obi-Wan and Vader side of things, there was a lot more emotion towards one another. And the reason there was no remorse there is because at this moment, there is no remorse. Just plain and simple. Obi-Wan, like I said earlier, had no faith in Anakin at this point. No belief that Anakin was going to come back and return from the light. If you watch episode 5, episode 6, he makes it very clear that Vader's lost cause. He gave up on him. He doesn't believe he can be redeemed. So if Obi-Wan at this moment is able to fight against Vader and actually substantially do something, he is most certainly going to be there to kill him. As a matter of fact, in episode 4, when he went to Death Star, he was there to kill Vader. I think there's a common misconception that he knew he was going to lose. And to a degree, that was true, but he only figured that out halfway through the fight. He was there on the Death Star to kill Darth Vader. That's why he was there. So he fully believes Vader is a lost cause and is going to kill him if he gets an opportunity. So here we have a Kenobi that did not go to Tatooine, so he's still younger, still spry to a degree. He can hold up against Vader a lot more than he did when he was aged by the Tatooine sun in episode 4. So how would that fight go if he is able to hold up more? And I feel as though, even though Kenobi is, younger, he can't overpower Vader still. Can he hold a kettle to him, so to speak? Absolutely. Defensively, I should say. So this fight would go to a stalemate almost. Vader's power of aggression versus Kenobi's power of defense. And I feel like it would be enough to where it would last much longer than either anticipated. So much so where they're in a situation where the ship is under attack and it is destroyed while they're still fighting one another. They perish in the blast. A sacrifice of Kenobi, one that he was willing to make if it meant Vader was going to die and Luke and Leia were able to continue the training. Because keep in mind, I had this advanced 6 months, I believe. So they had plenty of training. I didn't want to leave them on their own with only like a few weeks training or a few days training. So they have a good amount, and they have the entire galaxy ahead of them. They have a very huge situation on their shoulders. And yeah, it's just something I needed to do. But going on the side of Luke and Leia's story, I'm going to backtrack a bit here because one person I did bring in was Han Solo. And bringing him in, I believe I brought him in episode 6, maybe 7. He rescued Leia after they escaped Ilum. Well, after she escaped Ilum because Luke was captured there. And the reason I brought in Solo was I just wanted another familiar face in this story, and I thought he'll be a good way to bring him. This will be a good way to bring him in, and it was just, I was really toying with the idea of putting Solo in it from the jump. I just didn't know where to put him in because I don't think he'd find his way to rebellion on his own. It would have to be something that leads him there, as it was with episode 4. He's had his brushes with the rebellion, as we saw in Solo: A Star Wars Story, with these Cloud Riders, Imphy's Nest. So he knows what it means to be a rebel. He knows what it means to those people that are rebels. He just needed a cause to be brought to it, and that's what I did with this series. Was he rescued Leia? He brings her to Yavin, and they say, "Hey, we know what you've done. We heard about what happened on Savareen, as you saw that in the Solo Star Wars story as well, with the coaxium generators, I believe what they were called, and how he assisted in getting them to the people that actually needed them rather than the criminals at the time." And keep in mind, that wasn't a rebellion against the Empire, but the Swoop Riders at that moment were a rebel cell. Cells were throughout the galaxy, so he had his brush with the rebellion well before he had got into it. So that was my mindset. So word spreads in the galaxy. They know what he did. They wanted him there. So I was able to get Han Solo into this story, and I'm very proud about that, and Chewbacca. So I'm very proud about that. But back to Leia herself and getting her to this culmination of rescuing her brother, and this symbolic thing of her having her saber for the first time. And I thought, who can I put her against that's worthy of that challenge? Worthy, but not too high. And I thought Boba Fett is perfect. So I remember I did the with my version of the Bounty Hunter lineup, where Vader had Bounty Hunters brought in so he could find Kenobi. Boba was one of them, and Leia was confronted by Boba during the attack on the Executor, and she had a moment where she reaches through the Force, activates her saber, and stares down the most dangerous bounty hunter in the galaxy. And I thought, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want in this story, is Leia to have that moment of affirmation, of looking at a dangerous threat and having the confidence in herself to repel it and to walk away victorious and walk away with her brother as well, safely. Now, obviously, Boba did survive, if you saw the visual cue at the end there and the auditorial cue of them going off. But that's the epilogue. We'll talk about that in a second. And yeah, just having Leia confirm herself in the Force. That was the ultimate goal. That was her culmination in that episode, in that finale sequence. And they leave knowing that Kenobi sacrificed himself, and that further drives them to be successful in their journey. Now, let's talk about that epilogue. And if you saw it, if you were watching it along with it, listening to it, you saw that I put in the video of Luke and Leia training from the Rise of Skywalker. I knew from the moment I saw Rise of Skywalker that I wanted to use that footage for something. I was like, I don't care if it's them fighting each other actually or it's training. I want to use this footage, and I want to use it immediately. So having that moment of like, hey, they won, they're still training. It's 6 months in. They're not done training, but they're still training. And knowing that Leia just got her lightsaber, I was like, yes, I'm going to use it. This is the perfect moment to use this. And it's kind of like the wrap up, the almost happy ending that you see in Star Wars. Han is now with them in the rebellion. He's taking them to Bespin to meet with Lando, to possibly make an ally out of him. And Boba was still alive, and he tracked them, and he's following them. Because here is the thing that everyone looks forward to, the aftermath. Where do I see this story? The galaxy here. The reason Boba's tracking them, I actually thought about that, and I was considering putting it in there as a little scene. But I didn't want to make the epilogue like too long, because I was considering making the epilogue his own episode, but I thought, no, I'm just going to short it down to like a couple minutes at the end of this. But it was going to be a scene with Boba being contacted by a replacement for Vader, and that replacement was actually going to be Sly Moore, who is the woman that you see with Palpatine during episode 3 when he's giving his speech. I was actually going to kind of have her be elevated and brought to a center, and she was basically tasked with finding the rebels, or the 2 Jedi that Obi-Wan trained, and in a sense get vengeance for the death of Darth Vader. Almost the Empire would have gone into a huge cover-up phase to cover up the death of Vader, make it seem like it never happened, things like that. The rebellion, of course, would have been head over heels excited about their future. I mean, they just killed Darth Vader. They have 2 Jedi with them. Things could look better for them. So yeah, that's how the aftermath of it is. That's why I kind of see that story going in the future, if I ever was to pick it up in any kind of form, whether I write it and let you guys read it on something, or produce like a sequel kind of deal, which is rare, considering these are like original stories that can screw another original story. So I don't know if there will ever be sequels. I mean, I've thought about it, don't worry. But if there are sequels, they'll probably be just written. I don't know if I'll make actual videos for them. But, that's a thing we will find out when we get to a point of thinking about it, if that makes sense. Well, that's going to about wrap up the behind the scenes talking about the creation of this series. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I've enlightened you about the twists and turns of writing this series. Now, of course, we are looking forward to the future because more series are coming. And I also want to say, before I go any further, I know a lot of new faces came on board during this series, and I want to inform you guys how these series are made and the process of doing it. I am for the most part successful, about 85%, to release an episode a week every Sunday. Um, this is because I am the only person working on this channel. When I say we about the Marauders Guild, I am including all of you because you guys are just as big a part of it as I am. You guys are the ones who give me your feedback. You give me ideas for stories that I create. You guys are a huge part of this. So I want to say thank you for that as well. But like I said, keep in mind, I'm the only person. So if there are delays, it's because I'm human and I make mistakes, and or I get caught up with something and I have to deal with it. So that's just how it has to be. But let's talk about what's coming next. What is down the line? I can confirm to all of you that the next story will take us to the ending of the Clone Wars, where we will look at what if Ahsoka Tano killed Maul at Mandalore. I have not done a Clone Wars story for a while, so I'm super excited to jump into this. I have some cool ideas already on the docket, both for the story and for visual references as well, so I can't wait to bring those guys to you, and well, bring those things to you guys. I don't know how I messed up that sentence. But yeah, so keep tuned to the channel. Cool stuff is happening. Thank you guys for enjoying this series. I hope you guys stay safe out there. 2020 was a crazy and rocking year. Let's hope 2021 is better. I'm glad to have started the year by ending the series. And I can't wait to pick up the next one. And yes, that'll be about it. So the start of the outro here. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. And ring the bells to get notified about every upload here on the channel. And until the next time, may the force of others be with you.